This video is brought to you by Nebula. Last week, we did a video on the 3 reasons that Donald Trump could still beat Kamala Harris. We said still because, at the time, Harris was ahead in the polls, and momentum seemed to be with the Democrats. However, polls released in the past week or so apparently suggest that their respective fortunes have since reversed. While Harris is still ahead in the popular vote, Trump is apparently now slightly more likely to win the Electoral College, largely thanks to RFK's withdrawal and endorsement, but also because recent polls suggest that Harris is flagging in Pennsylvania. Nonetheless, the election is still basically a toss-up. So in this video, we thought we'd take a look at 3 reasons, even if she's currently a smidge behind, Harris can still win in November, namely Democrats' overperformance at recent elections, abortion, and her recent political moderation. Before we start, if you haven't already, please consider subscribing and ringing the bell to stay in the loop and be notified when we release new videos. Now, before we get into it, 2 quick caveats. First, obviously, this video isn't intended as an exhaustive list of reasons Harris could win. We're just picking the 3 we think are most relevant, but let us know in the comments if there's anything we missed that we should have included. Second, before we get a whole load of comments telling us this video betrays our pro-Harris or pro-Democrat bias, as we said a second ago, last week we did a video on 3 reasons Trump can win, so go and watch that if you want some balance. Anyway, caveats aside, let's get into it. Starting with the first reason the Democrats could win in November, their overperformance at recent elections. In short, while it's common knowledge that Trump has outperformed the polls at the last 2 presidential elections, it's less well known that Democrats have actually massively outperformed the polls themselves in the past few years. The most notable example here were the 2022 midterms, when, thanks to a combination of high inflation and low presidential approval ratings for Biden, basically everyone was expecting Republicans to dominate. Unfortunately for Trump, this so-called red wave failed to materialize. While Republicans gained seats in the House and still won the popular vote by 2.8%, they actually lost a seat in the Senate, and Democrats were able to flip the governorships in Arizona, Maryland, and Massachusetts, while also performing conspicuously well in state legislatures in Michigan, Minnesota, and Pennsylvania. It's hard to overstate quite how good these results were. For those of you not overly familiar with American politics, incumbents almost always get hammered at midterms, and 2022 was the first midterm since 1934 where the president's party didn't lose any state legislative chambers or incumbent senators. Democrats have also massively outperformed the polls at recent special elections, i.e. elections held at irregular times, usually to fill a recently vacated seat. Perhaps the most recent notable example came in New York earlier this year, when Democrats won the seat recently vacated by George Santos by 8 points, a 16-point swing on 2022 and 4 points better than the polls had predicted going into the race. According to 538, if we extrapolate from just the special election results from the first 9 months of 2023, Democrats would have a national lead of about 11 points. Now, this doesn't mean that we should expect Harris to win the popular vote by 11 points in November. For starters, Republicans have started performing better in special elections this year, but also Democrats' overperformance at special elections seems to be mostly driven by high turnout amongst die-hard Democrats, not by winning over Republicans or independents. And this turnout effect will be muted at the presidential election because turnout will be higher on both sides. Nonetheless, this should be cause for cautious optimism among Democrats, both because historically special election results have actually been a relatively good indicator of popular vote, but also because one of the reasons that polls and special election results were diverging was the fact that Biden's approval rating was way lower than that of both other Democratic candidates and the Democratic Party, and Harris should mitigate this. Anyway, one of the big reasons that turnout has been especially high amongst die-hard Democrats is abortion. This isn't just because Roe v. Wade has been overturned, but also because Republican state legislatures have reacted to its overturning by passing a series of restrictive anti-abortion laws, which are deeply unpopular. Abortion is now banned in 14 states. After 6 weeks in 4 states, and after 12 weeks in 2 states, with bans in Montana and Wyoming currently in the courts. This means 22 states now ban abortion earlier in pregnancy than the standard previously set by Roe v. Wade. These policies are very unpopular in wider America. Pew Research polling suggests that 63% of Americans, including 41% of Republicans or Republican-leaning independents, and 61% of men think abortion should be legal in at least most cases, while only 36% think it should be illegal in most cases. There was hope in Republican circles that the salience of the issue would decline over time, but polling suggests the reverse has happened, with 22% of women now saying it's their top issue for November, up from 17% in May, and just 2 points behind the economy. This is in large part because Harris has been far more willing to campaign on the issue than Biden, who is a devout Catholic and has never been the most vocal defender of abortion rights. Trump is clearly aware of this political risk, and he's tried to moderate his position on the issue and distance himself from more conservative Republicans. But this hasn't really worked. Late last week, he told NBC that he thought Florida's proposed 6-week abortion ban was too strict, only to U-turn a few days later after a backlash from conservative Republicans, and say he would in fact vote against the Florida abortion ballot initiative in November, which aims to overturn the ban. And this leads us nicely onto our third reason, Harris's moderation. Basically, unlike Trump, Harris has been able to move her politics to the centre without incurring that much backlash from more leftist Democrats. To give just a few examples, Harris has said she no longer supports a fracking ban, a federal job guarantee, or a single-payer healthcare system, all policies she had previously endorsed. More recently, Harris has significantly hardened her positions on immigration, including at least indirectly expressing support for a wall on the southern border. While these moves have provoked some irritation on the left of the Democratic Party, it's been remarkably muted, allowing Harris to pitch to the independent or undecided voters who will probably decide the election without losing votes to her left. The Trump campaign have tried to attack Harris for flip-flopping, but this attack line doesn't have that much purchase when Trump himself has a long history of flip-flopping, and it's definitely not as effective as their previous attack line, that Harris is a dangerous liberal.
Look, as British people, we often cast a wary eye at our friends across the Atlantic. But honestly, the last few months have been especially wild. We've seen Biden bail from the race after a terrible debate,
my fellow Americans,
the red-blue divide making way for lurid green, Trump accusing Kamala of changing her race, Vance getting accused of couches, endless memes about coconut trees, and endless arguments over crowd sizes.
This weird obsession with crowd sizes.
Obama making a joke, Trump talking about Biden like an ex he misses, RFK Jr. potentially having worms in his brain, before admitting to burying a bear in Central Park. Oh, and an assassination attempt that we all kind of forgot about because of all of the other chaos. I mean, honestly, WTF USA. The thing is though, while it might be tempting to just roll your eyes at these shenanigans, these aren't just meme-worthy moments. And you know I'm serious, because I've not stood up in a video since COVID. But these incidents actually pose important questions, like how much does the Gen Z vote matter this time round? How important will online campaigning and social media prove to be? What impact do running mates have? Okay, I don't have words for that one. These are the kinds of things we'll be explaining in our new Nebula original series, What to Follow USA, only on Nebula. Each week, we'll take the moments that have been dominating internet discourse and explaining the true politics under the hood. Look at me pandering to the American audience. We'll be releasing new episodes of What to Follow every Friday through to the election. The fact that it's on Nebula means we've been able to take more risks with this series. The tone and attitude of the show isn't what you'd expect from TLDR. I'm not sure we've talked about fucking couches on YouTube before, but the journalism and reporting is exactly the standard you'd expect. Nebula support also means that we can do things differently, create additional content for you, and tackle topics that the YouTube algorithm just wouldn't normally allow for. It's not just this new series on Nebula either though. There's also incredible originals on the platform like Modern Conflicts from Real Life Law, or the upcoming documentary from Tom Nicholas, Boomers, which takes a provocative look at the lives and legacy of the baby boom generation. Plus, we also post all of our normal content on Nebula ad-free, and often before it ends up on YouTube. If you want to check all of that out, plus WTF USA, then head to go.nebula.tv/WTF, or click the link in the description. That way, you can pick up an annual Nebula subscription for a huge 40% off. We're really happy with how this new series has turned out, so please do give the series a look. We'd really appreciate it.